so next up we have Monero. So I'm going to hand it over to Diego.
Let's go ahead and do this. If you're here, you're watching stuff, okay? Everyone's heard of Monero. Everybody, you know, like it's a kind of trusted name in the space. Everyone has this kind of begrudging respect for Monero. Even the Bitcoin maximalists are like, oh, there's only Bitcoin. But, you know, if you want some privacy, you can use Monero too. So I kind of gave away a little bit already by saying, you know, the word privacy. So I'm going to go ahead and present to you guys, Monero, what we've been up to, what we've been doing, why we're exciting, why you should care. And hopefully I'll be able to do all that in 15 minutes. Don't worry, guys. I practiced. I won't go over time. So Monero, the definitive presentation. Who am I? My name is Diego Salazar. Many people online know me as Rerar, which you can see on my wire thing there, REHRAR. I work for the core team of Monero. That automatically, whatever sprang into your mind is probably incorrect. The core team of Monero is not like the core team of all the other coins that are going around that works for either their nonprofit organization or their foundation or their corporation or whatever. The core team is just a couple of random individuals that are trusted by the community to take care of trusted tasks, just because there are things that we would like to be decentralized that are not yet decentralized. Things like owning a domain name. Somebody's name has to be on the credit card. Somebody's name has to be the one to own that domain name. So we're bridging a decentralized and centralized world with the core team. So they pay me out of Monero's general fund to do a bunch of different stuff. I keep a finger on the pulse of the community. I see what's going on. I make sure people have the resources that they need. And in return, I get some Monero every month. Lucky me. I am one of the few to actually get paid in cryptocurrency. Let's go ahead. Monero 101. Monero is, I'm going to put it very bluntly and very simply, the most exciting, boring cryptocurrency you're ever going to come across. We are very, very boring. We don't have a big claim to fame like the world computer or, you know, we're going to revolutionize XYZ industries. Even though the coins that claim to do that are probably not going to do that either, but we are boring in the sense that we focus on one thing above all else, and that thing is privacy. So when we make big strides, we're like, oh, cool, what does this new technology that you implemented do? Well, it increases user privacy. We just did this really big thing. Oh, really? What does it do? Well, it increases user privacy. So basically everything that we do is to increase our users' privacy. Now, because of that, people call us a privacy coin. I personally think this is a bit of a misnomer, just because if you look at our current banking system, like, you don't post your bank statements online every month for everybody to read all the time, do you? When you log into your bank account, you only see your stuff, not everybody else's stuff. So like, that's kind of the things that we're used to. But with Bitcoin, its derivatives and its other coins that are similar to it, all of them are extremely open and transparent, and every transaction that you make is available for everyone anywhere to view, always, forever. This doesn't seem like a smart way to conduct finances, if we're being really honest. So the community of Monero saw the great things that Bitcoin did, such like censorship resistance, the immutability of the ledger, but we saw the privacy as a fatal flaw, not just for privacy's sake, but for fungibility's sake. And I don't think I'm going to have time to get into that today. But if you do a little bit of digging, I'm sure you can find what fungibility means. You've probably heard the word thrown around here and there. So Monero is all about privacy by default. We believe that kind of add-on or bolted-on privacy via second layer solutions or mixing or whatever is very, very weak. There's a lot of leaked metadata, and blockchain analysis is getting better and better by the day in terms of linking addresses to identities. So Monero takes the approach that privacy is all about how big your crowd is and how homogenous this crowd is. So if we make the privacy by default mandatory that everyone's got to use, the crowd is big, the crowd is homogenous, so everybody by default has privacy, which in all honesty seems kind of like the only sane way of doing finances these days. So if you are following other cryptocurrency projects, please, by all means, go to them and say, what are you guys planning on doing about user privacy? Why are we focusing on scaling, making things reach as many people as possible when we're not focusing on making sure that all these people that we're going to reach that are going to get into the system are going to be secure and private. That seems like we're doing things pretty backwards over here. Okay, what has Monero been up to? Monero was known for many, many things. We were known for having large transaction sizes, big transaction fees, being overly private. Governments aren't going to like us. We're going to be used by all the druggies, all this kind of stuff that people say without knowing anything about anything, right? So we have done some really exciting things, such as last year, you may have heard the whole bulletproof debacle, which is basically the idea that a bunch of smart academic nerds got together and they made some cool math cryptography thingies that made we were able to shrink the size of our ring signatures by quite a large amount, by up to 80%, and transactions for transaction sizes and transaction fees followed similarly. So this was kind of like last year. This was the biggest thing that we did, shrinking transaction sizes by up to 80%. They used Monero transactions used to be like 50 times the size of a Bitcoin transaction. So people were like, scalability. And they were kind of right. Now, Monero transactions are like 6 to 8 times the size of a Bitcoin transaction, which is still bigger, obviously, because we're putting privacy technologies on top in addition to other stuff that is stored on the blockchain. So that's something you really can't get away from completely. But hey, 6 times bigger is a lot better than 50 times bigger. So that was the major achievement that we had kind of this past year. What are we doing right now? It goes to privacy present. We're going to be doing some more optimizations on a ring signature, replacing ML-SAG with CL-SAG. So we're replacing the M with the C, but the LSAG kind of sticks around anyway. It's just a kind of proving scheme. And once again, this is going to be able to reduce transaction sizes and things by up to 20 to 30%. So the numbers are looking like. This is actually really exciting. So not just do the transactions get smaller, what this means is that we can make our ring signatures, or the number of outputs that you're able to use as decoys, we can increase that number. So your anonymity set, your effective anonymity set, gets bigger and bigger and bigger as our transactions get smaller, because we're able to use that saved space to increase the decoys in your anonymity set. So once again, people are like, well, what does this do? Well, it increases user privacy. Ha ha ha. What do we got coming up? This is some really stupid, exciting things. So for those of you who don't know, Monero, like I said, we use ring signatures, which kind of mixes your outputs. It's not really mixing because it's not interactive, but we use ring signatures, which allow your outputs to be hidden alongside several other decoy outputs, so nobody knows which is the real output. We also use ring CT to hide amounts and stealth addresses to hide receivers. So basically, senders, receivers, and amounts are all hidden. Ring signatures, though, are our weakest portion of privacy, and we are well aware of that. Right now, the number of decoys is 10. So there's 1 real transaction and 10 fake transactions. And so there's 11 in total. And if you use certain heuristics, and if you're able to be super smart and statistical and nerdy, you're able to kind of maybe reduce that effective anonymity set by saying it couldn't possibly be this output, it couldn't possibly be this output, using certain metadata to link certain things, which is, by the way, 1 billion times worse on transparent coins such as Bitcoin. But we have a couple things in the pipeline by our Monero research lab called Triptych and Arcturus, which are other alternative proving mechanisms that will shrink things even further, that will potentially allow us to take our ring sizes up to over 100. So now you don't have like 10 decoys that you're mixing with, you have like 100 decoys that you're mixing with. So even if some people are able to apply heuristics and reduce the effective anonymity set by 5, 10, 20%, now you still have like 80 other things that you're mixing with. So your privacy is still quite robust. Rest assured, for those of you like, well, you don't have 100 today, you have 10 today, so it's not really that great. It's still, according to the research that we've been doing, it's still decently robust. And because it's on by default, we think that we are probably the most robust privacy that there is currently, because things like Zcash, Bitcoin mixing and stuff, they always have this kind of opt-in mentality. And the amount of people that opt into privacy are so minuscule. It's so small, guys. It's so small that your anonymity set, the people that you're mixing with, are usually very, very small in and of themselves. Okay. So one other thing I was asked to speak about was our economic situation. How is Monero doing? You know, like when the crash of 2017, and then we're kind of going up and everyone's making the over 9,000 memes, and then we go back down and we go back up. How does Monero handle this? Well, I'm sorry to say that Monero ran out of all of our ICO money and we'll be closing our doors this upcoming month. No, that's a joke. It may be a bad joke, but it's a fun joke that we always like to give because Monero. Oops, I'm so sorry. I dropped a couple of things. Yeah, we're fine. We're good. No need to call the ambulance. Monero was launched fairly, meaning that there was no pre-mine, there was no founder's reward, there was no ICO, there was none of this nonsense that all these other cryptocurrencies do in order to try to either enrich themselves in the case of 95% of coins, or pay for some people to do some semi-interesting things some of the time. Monero is completely community run and community driven. When we raise funds for something, we do it via a crowdfunding like system. So you can think Kickstarter, but with Monero, we call it the CCS, the community crowdfunding system. And basically the way that it works is some people come up and they're like, hey, I'm willing to do 3 months of coding work, or I'm willing to make a couple of YouTube videos that explain this and that about Monero, and I'll do it for this Monero and deliver in this time period. And if people like that, if the community likes that, like, yeah, okay, we literally throw Monero at it until such time where it's filled and the person does the work. The core team, once again, bridging the centralized and decentralized worlds, they're the ones that kind of escrow the funds, and they disperse the funds based off of milestones. So we don't have a corporation, a foundation, a business, and anything behind us that is kind of fronting this money and paying these people. For the most part, we are mostly volunteers doing this. All of our translations, most of them are pretty much volunteers. Anything that is paid via the CCS. And we have like one full-time PhD researcher at present time. We had two. We have one, and maybe we'll have two again here pretty soon. That this person is funded by the CCS every 3 months. So every 3 months they submit another proposal. I'm willing to do more math nerdy stuff for another 3 months. If you're willing to do it, we throw money at him and he keeps sticking with us. So I think we're a pretty fun little place to work with. We have the luxury of not needing to be professional. I don't have a boss. Nobody in these volunteer places has a boss, right? And so, I mean, heck, that may be the reason why this may be the least professional presentation that you've heard so far, because I don't have a brand to uphold, or I don't have, we are just all people that are passionate about privacy and fungibility. We want there to be a digital way for people to transact privately. No, it's not just for druggies. No, it's not just for pedophiles. It's for everybody. In fact, I, as a squeaky clean kind of guy, right? I'm pretty squeaky clean, is about as good as we come. If somebody sends me a dirty Bitcoin that's been through the darknet market, that's been through a drug transaction, now all of a sudden I am a part of those hops. And so I may get somebody coming to my door saying, hey, Diego, why do you have this Bitcoin? Were you involved in this kind of transaction? And no, I wasn't. I just sold the guy a t-shirt, right? But for some reason, now all of a sudden, because of the lack of privacy on this thing for everybody, I am involved in this, even though I had absolutely nothing to do with this. So actually, I, as a squeaking clean guy, I may need privacy more than these druggies or anyone who spends it on bad stuff, right? Because I want to protect my reputation. And it can easily be destroyed by something that has nothing to do with me. So I didn't press the right button. So I kind of talked about the ecosystem, how Monero does things. We mostly do things via work groups. And work groups is this idea that because we don't have a corporation saying, okay, you're in charge of marketing and you're in charge of this, we have like-minded people self-organize and do their own thing. So we do have a small marketing arm called Monero Outreach, and it's a bunch of people who are like, ooh, I have some marketing experience. How can I help? And they're like, oh, well, we already have a work group over there, and they just do kind of little outreach organization stuff. So they go and they work all together on that. These things are usually self-organized. The core team and my job is to kind of make sure they have resources that they need to do whatever they want to do. So do they need a place to organize on? Do they need some sort of like we have a Taiga, a Mattermost, which is like a Slack open source alternative. We're all about like open source silly stuff. Okay, I'm running out of time and I want to answer questions, so I'm getting to the questions. Question, explain it like I5, the pros and cons of using Ring CT versus ZK Snarks. Okay, I can do this in like 20 seconds. It's a really big conversation. Basically, ZK Snarks has a trusted component. It's ZK Snarks is very powerful in terms of privacy. RingCT is trustless. There is no trust involved in the setup of the privacy here. So I would say ZK Snarks is about as good as you get, and the privacy is demonstrably better than Monero, but there is a trusted component to it, whereas RingCT is the best that you can get in terms of trustless privacy at the moment. Like I said, we're looking at Triptych and Arcturus. That is going to increase that considerably. But that's kind of the long and short, and it really depends on people's personal philosophy. Some people are fine with the trust. If that's the case, use ZK Snarks. Some people are not fine with the trust component. If that's the case, use RingCT. Yeah, did you want to hop on here?
No, you were doing a good job yourself. But yeah, I have another question here. So I guess kind of just a broad question on the roadmap, and I think another point that I think we should touch on in this question is Monero's recent Nitrogen Nebula release. So if you just touch on that, and then kind of like what are the kind of big things that you're looking forward to?
Sure. So the Nitrogen Nebula release, you're right. Like the CLI was released 4 or 5 days ago. The GUI was released like yesterday. Basically, the big change in this release is that we have added Dandelion++ to our nodes by default. So all the nodes that use these, the reference client, will have Dandelion++ turned on by default, which is just a way that you can increase user privacy on the networking level. You may have heard of Dandelion via some things. It was originally developed for Bitcoin. It was implemented by things like Digibyte. Well, Dandelion had a couple of issues, and so the smart nerdy guys came back and made it Dandelion++ to fix those issues, and that's the one that we have just recently implemented. So on a networking level, users are going to be more secure than ever before, and it is going to stop people from identifying IP addresses as easily from which transactions originate. They won't know still who you sent it to or how much money or which outputs, but they may be able to identify that an IP address sent a Monero transaction. And that is way more metadata than we are comfortable with leaking, even if nothing else about the transaction is shown. We are just hardcore committed to making Monero as like bulletproof as possible when it comes to privacy. Any other question? I know we got like 1 minute. Yeah,
gotcha.
Step off the stage.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So we were not going to have other time for more questions. We do have tons and tons and tons of resources available if you want to learn about this. If you want to continue this conversation, please, by all means, you can contact me on Wire at Rabrar. I also have a Telegram of the Salazar. It's the same as my Twitter. I don't think I have a slide for that, unfortunately. Because I don't like talking to people. It's kind of the worst. But here's my Twitter, and my Telegram is the same as that of the Salazar. You're free to drop me a line to talk with me. There's Monero has a Reddit, reddit.com/r/Monero, just like all these other shitcoins. So come talk with us about any of these things, and we're more than happy to break these things down for you. We have video resources, paper resources, blog resources, talking about all of these things. So I think that's my time. Thank you so much for having me. Really fun to come on here and talk with you guys about Monero. I hope it's piqued your guys' interest a little bit, to dig a little deeper, and to ask hard questions of the other coins that you're following. What are you doing about user privacy? And they're going to give you evasive answers because they have no idea. Haha. So thanks for having me on. Enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks, Diego. And thanks for your energy.